PHII Heart Institute is a world-class cardiac center that began to take shape in the early 1980s. We're very proud of what's taken place here with the development of a center that offers the newest and most modern treatment for the cardiac patient. But we're also most proud of the fact that despite this large program, we've been able to deliver the compassionate personal care for patients and their families.
I was in my last year of cardiology fellowship at a hospital which is in Boston. I got a phone call from Bob Harp. He was at the Mayo Clinic at that time. He wanted the challenge of starting a new program where there was nothing. That sounded fine to me. We actually never met until we both came to Springfield. Harp and I were invited out to the Mother House. There were about 12 elderly nuns around this table. We were talking and telling them what we wanted to do, and one of them got up and left. Another one got up and left. This depressed us a little bit, and in about 20 minutes they were both back, and they had each called apparently well-off citizens of Springfield and they had volunteered the money to buy a heart-lung machine.
In 1963, the partnership between the Hospital Sisters of St. Francis, cardiac surgeon Dr. Robert Harp, and cardiologist Dr. Paul Smalley laid the foundation for today's PHII Heart Institute at St. John's Hospital. Their dedication to excellence from day one established one of the leading cardiac programs in the country. The 1960s was a true pioneering decade in cardiac medicine. Surgical procedures were limited to either the repair of congenital heart defects or those caused by rheumatic fever, almost unheard of today. Surgery was risky. Mortality rates were high, forcing major hospitals, even those affiliated with medical schools, to abandon cardiac programs almost as soon as they began. The heart program at St. John's had to succeed where others had failed. During that first year, the cardiac nursing and surgical teams were recruited from the best of St. John's staff. Members of the newly assembled cardiac team traveled to study the few successful heart programs. The facilities were renovated to accommodate cardiac care. Cardiac catheterizations were performed at the radiology department until the opening of the new cardiac catheterization lab, just one in a history of firsts for the heart program at St. John's.
We established the first cardiac laboratory in Illinois outside of Chicago in 1963 here at St. John's Hospital. The laboratory and its equipment were rather primitive when compared to what is available today. Things have really changed. If you told a patient they needed a cardiac catheterization 35 years ago, people considered it almost a definite sign that they were going to die.
For the first year, the team practiced open heart surgery in an animal lab, learning the complexities of the heart-lung machine. Dr. Paul Smalley remembers the first cardiac surgeries.
We were fortunate we got the heart-lung machine. It was designed by one of the original cardiac surgeons, a man named Gibbon, and was terribly expensive for the time, and actually cost more than one costs now. But it had the one saving feature, in spite of its complexity, that you could leave people hooked up to it for a long length of time without damaging the patient. At first we had to sterilize it with formalin. It took us about 4 hours to put the machine together. Had to wear gas masks because of the formalin. You couldn't breathe in the room from the fumes. For a couple of years, I always came during surgery until the technicians felt perfectly comfortable with the equipment. How did I feel for the first surgery? Well, the first one was not an open heart. It was a closed mitral valvulotomy. That patient did very well. Second patient, she did not survive. If you ask me what in those first few cases, what I was thinking of through the whole thing was, don't let them die. You know? Most of the complications of heart surgery in the first 24 hours are directly related to the surgery. So Dr. Harp would spend the night after the surgery. And most of the problems at 48 hours were the kind of thing that a cardiologist would be very familiar with. So if the patient was having any problems, I stayed the second night.
St. John's Coronary Intensive Care Unit offered cardiac monitoring equipment and specialized staff trained in newly developed resuscitation techniques. Sister Ann Carlino was a member of the first coronary ICU team.
The intensive care unit in the 1960s was quite different from the room that you see today in the Prairie Heart Institute. We did have a lot of technology, but it was all manually performed. And today, as you know, we have all the dynamics of technology giving us computerized results. The similarities of the intensive care units was the dedication to the patient and the personalized care that was given to the patient still exists today in the Prairie Heart Institute. In the 60s, 45% of the people who sustained a heart attack would die within the first 24 hours. Now with monitoring, we were able to watch their heart activity. Should an arrhythmia occur, we were also able to inject medication that would control the arrhythmia and therefore save the patient's life.
The heart program was well established by 1967, when the next milestone in cardiac medicine, coronary bypass surgery, was achieved at the Cleveland Clinic. Later that year, Dr. Harp and Dr. Smalley performed the first coronary bypass surgery at St. John's Hospital. By then, the reputation of the heart program at St. John's was well established.
I think we realized that we had done it right somewhere in the early 1970s, or more likely maybe mid-1970s. We realized doctors and doctors' families were not going out of town for their heart surgery. They were having it done here. If you start a program and it has a surgeon who can get such excellent results, it sets off a snowball effect, because if you're going to attract high-quality doctors, people at day one have to have been high quality. Harp's ability as a surgeon is what made the program grow.
By 1976, the heart program at St. John's Hospital had grown in national reputation, size, and patient reach. The new establishment of the Southern Illinois University School of Medicine in Springfield brought a complement of resources to the medical community. Dr. Harp, with St. John's Hospital, began preliminary plans for a heart institute, integrating the growing spectrum of cardiac services.
Prior to his leaving to go on vacation to Colorado with his 4 children, we had been working on a long-range planning committee for a future heart institute. I remember receiving a call 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was his trip back from his vacation that his airplane went down. And of course, all 4 of his children died with him. Dr. Harp was a big-hearted man. People meant a lot to him. I remember him coming down after surgery, even when a patient did not survive. And I remember him sitting there with the family, holding their hands, talking with them, crying with them, caring about them. It was a great loss, but he left a wonderful legacy, and he gave us the start that we needed.
The plans